If you've ever wanted to design your dream home in a 3D modeling program, or if you wanted to design something in a 3D program that could be used in the real world, basically invent a new gadget or whatever it might be, then this video is a good place to start. We're going to take a look at a free 3D modeling tool called Google SketchUp. And this video is really going to stick to the basics. I am definitely not an expert in Google SketchUp, but I do want to share what I know about how to get started, at least fiddling around with SketchUp. Unfortunately, if you do want to design your dream home, this video is not going to get you all the way there. It'll just get you started. So, speaking of getting started, let's get started. The way you would get SketchUp to use on your own computer would be to go to SketchUp.com, as you can see here. When you get there, on the right side, there's a button that says Download SketchUp. I'll click that, and it says Let's choose a product. And the main thing here is you need to put in what you plan to use SketchUp for. If you're a beginner, kind of like I am, you'll probably want to just choose personal, or if you're a teacher, educational use. Let's look at the differences. If you click on personal projects, it says it's easy, fun, and free to draw in 3D. It's not licensed for commercial work. So this is a hobbyist, this is a beginner that wants to learn the product, and then maybe once you become proficient in it, you'll buy the professional version. For those of you that are educators or students, there's a really great option. Just choose educational use and put in this information. And notice what it says. It's completely free for K-12 students and educators. Now, if you do decide that you're ready to pay for SketchUp Pro, just know that it is fairly expensive, in the hundreds of dollars, but for professionals, it's very much worth it. I'm going to just assume that you're downloading the SketchUp Make, which is the free education version, but what you see from here on out will be very similar whether you're using the personal free version or the educational free version. So simply fill in the rest of this information and click Download SketchUp. Give me a few seconds to do that, and then we'll get started again. Okay, I've filled in the information and I've clicked Download SketchUp. In just a second, it's going to start downloading. And there it goes. It's downloading to my computer. This is a fairly big install, so it may take some time if you're on Wi-Fi. But within a reasonable amount of time, you'll have the program downloaded to your computer. Then you'll just need to install it. And it's finished downloading. At this point, it would be different if you're on a Windows computer, but you would basically click or double click to open that up. You might need to go to your downloads folder to find it, and then just follow the instructions that will appear on the screen to install it on your computer. And you'll be ready to start using SketchUp. Okay, having downloaded and installed Google SketchUp, now I'm ready to open it up and start using it. On a Mac computer, for me, that means going down to the Applications area and finding SketchUp. It's a folder as of right now, but if I double click on it, it opens up with some of the tools that are available. I'll just click on the SketchUp tool and it's going to start opening up. I'll go ahead and give permission to open this application that was downloaded from the internet. So if you see a warning, something like that, please accept it and open it up, and you may get a license agreement, something like this. I'll agree to that and click continue. At this point, I'm just going to click Start Using SketchUp. Notice when I did that, it said you need to choose a template. I'm going to go ahead and select what is really the default, simple template, feet and inches. But notice that there are options for meters. There's also an architectural design option. I'm just going to go with simple template. I'll click Start Using SketchUp. And it opens up, and we have a person here in a 3D world, and you can see the intersection of the different axes. We've got the y-axis and the x-axis and the z-axis. Now, I'd recommend that the first thing you do once you're in here is to make a few preference changes. And to do that, if you're using this on Windows, I think you go to the Windows tab and select Preferences or something like that. On a Mac, you need to make sure that you have selected the program somewhere in the program so that it says SketchUp here at the top, and then just go to Preferences and General. And you want to make sure that Automatically Check Models for Problems is selected. Also, you're going to want Automatically Fix Problems when they are found. It's important to have a backup and autosave, just because these are sometimes pretty big files that we're working in using SketchUp. You're going to want to have a backup option in case things crash. I'm going to close out of those options. And the other thing that I like to do before I get started using SketchUp is to go up here to View and Tool Palettes, and I like to select the large tool set. Now, there's lots of other tool palettes that you might want to add, including sandbox and warehouse is cool, and some of these others as well might be pretty useful to you. But I like to at least start with this expanded tool palette. Okay, next we're going to consider, what do we really have here? Like I said, we've got the different axes, and we've got a person standing there at the intersection. Now, to give you a better feel for what you're looking at here, I'm going to use the scroll wheel on my mouse to zoom in a little bit, zoom out, and then also I'm going to use this orbit tool that's here. It's also here at the left, and I'm going to press and hold the scroll wheel, which on most mice is a button if you press and hold that scroll wheel. And that's what I'm doing. I'm just pressing and holding on that scroll wheel, and now I can move the mouse around and orbit, and you can see that this is a 3D world. Now, this character here, this person, is not a 3D person. If I go like this and orbit down a little bit, you'll see that she's very two-dimensional. She's kind of a shallow person. But the rest of the world that we're dealing with is in 3 dimensions. Now, sometimes this orbit tool doesn't work the first time for me flawlessly, so you might need to select it, deselect it, select it again, and then press and hold the mouse button. And once you've done that or something like that and it starts working, it should be fine. Now, even if I switch to the select tool again, so notice it dropped the orbit tool. Even in that case, now I can use the orbit tool by pressing and holding the scroll wheel button. So that's a tool that you're going to come back to over and over as you use Google SketchUp. Now, another way to get a feel for what we're looking at in SketchUp is by going up here to Camera, Standard Views, and notice you can just click Top, and you'll get a top-down view of your project. You can see the girl has disappeared. You can see the woman has disappeared pretty much because she's so two-dimensional, and we're looking straight down. You can also go in and change it to bottom. You can change the camera to left, to right, all of these different options. I'm just going to go back to top, and then I'll press and hold the scroll wheel button and drag to orbit back approximately to where we were to begin with. Now, if you'd like, you can just click on this character and tap delete to remove the character from your scene. However, it might be a good idea to leave that character there. This helps you get a sense for dimensions and scale and things like that. So assuming that this person is 5 feet tall, that gives us some sense of how big things should be. Okay, I'm going to go back to the top-down view by going to Camera, Standard Views, and Top. And now notice on a Mac, there are some shortcuts that we can use. Anytime I want to go to Top View, I can just press the Command key on the keyboard and tap 1. And on a Windows computer, there are similar keyboard shortcuts that you can use. Okay, what I'd like to do next is start to build a house around this person. And to do that, I'm going to need to introduce a new tool. That is the line tool, or the pencil tool, as I like to call it. So I'm going to click on the pencil tool, and I'm going to back up again a little bit further just by using the scroll wheel. I'm scrolling back away from the scene or from the object that I'm about to create. Now, to create a line using the line tool or the pencil tool, you just click on one point and then move your mouse, and I'm not holding the mouse button. I just clicked once, let go, and now I'm able to move the end point of this line to where I want it to be, and then I can just click again, and that line is created. Now notice it automatically created a second line for me, and I can just zoom out a little bit more and move the mouse to where I want this line to end. Now notice SketchUp is full of little guides and helpers that will help you to more easily create what you want to create. You'll notice that this line just wants to snap into place at a perfect right angle to my first line. And so it's helping me. And the reason for that is green shows that it's exactly on the green axis. This is one of the hardest things to get used to in Google SketchUp, is thinking in 3 dimensions. Okay? I'm making a line, but where does that line exist? It needs to exist in the Z dimension. And the fact that it's showing up green tells me that it is on that particular axis. Now I'm going to click again, and I get another line. Click again, and click again. Now once I do that, once I outline a shape completely, notice that it fills it in blue, in light blue, and it creates basically a face. Okay, this is the surface face. Now, to verify that I did this correctly, I'm going to press and hold on the scroll wheel button and orbit down, and you can see that it looks like I did do it correctly. I have got a rectangle that exists in the correct dimensions. You know, it's the way I was hoping it would be, basically flat on the ground, and my character is standing on it. So this is going to form the floor of my house. Okay, great. Now, I could go ahead and attempt to create the walls of this house. That would be the next step probably, right? And I could click here at the corner of the house and I could try to create a wall vertically. And it looks like it's working fine. The line is coming in blue, as you can see, which is a good hint that it's on that blue axis. And, you know, I could probably successfully do this and create a wall. But more often than not, you may run into some trouble, especially if you're new at using SketchUp. And so for that reason, I'm going to want to undo what I just did. I'm just going to do Edit, Undo, Draw Line, or Command Z or Control Z to get back to where I was before. Instead of creating each wall manually one by one, instead I'm going to use a new tool called the Push-Pull tool. This is one we haven't used yet, but I'll just click on the Push-Pull tool, click on the surface or the face that was created when I made this rectangle, and then I'm just going to pull up. And look what it does. The Push-Pull tool drags a two-dimensional object, a two-dimensional thing, into the third dimension. And so now it is a 3D object. And my character is inside that object. Now, if I wanted to, I could click on this other surface that was just recently brought into existence, and I could drag and make it bigger that direction or this direction. You have the ability to use the Push-Pull tool to push or to pull any face or surface in Google SketchUp. Okay, I'm going to press and hold the scroll wheel button just to show you that that really is a three-dimensional object now. All right, next I want to switch my camera, and I'd like to go to a standard view. How about the right side of this building that we're making? Okay, I'd like to have my house have a pitched roof, and so to do that, I'm going to need to use the pencil tool again. I'll click on that, click on the corner of the house, and then I get to decide how steep of a roof it is. Okay, maybe up to there. I click, and then I click down here on this corner. Now if I've done it right, it should create a surface, and you can see the face of that changes color. Now if it is important to you to create these models that we're creating to scale, you're going to want to pay attention to the lower right corner. This is the length indicator, and you can see the length of this particular line that I'm drawing. That is 29 feet. So that's something to consider. To be honest with you, I am very much an amateur with Google SketchUp. And so honestly, I don't care that much about making things to scale. I'm still kind of exploring and trying it out myself. So I'm not going to stress about that, but you can. And one more thing about that length indicator in the lower right corner. If I were to create this line by clicking, and maybe all I want is the line, anytime you're in a tool and you want to get out of what's happening, you can just tap the escape key on your keyboard and it will stop it. Okay, so I didn't want a second line, I just wanted the first. I tapped escape and it released it. Okay, wonderful. So I've got my roof on my house, or do I? If I use the orbit tool, notice that it's not really a roof, it's just one face there. And so you know what to do. Why not use the push-pull tool to click on that and drag and pull the roof across. Now, let's look at this. I'm going to orbit around here. It could be hard for me to line that up perfectly with the end of this house. And if you go too far, look what happens. SketchUp is trying to compensate for what you're trying to do, and it's not perfect. So just to give you a little trick that you can use, it's really easy to make this line up perfectly with the house down here. All you need to do is, while you're using the push-pull tool, you still have your finger clicking the mouse and holding it. Just click and drag and pull down, and notice what happens. You see that dashed vertical line? That is indicating to SketchUp that I want this surface here to match up exactly with this surface down here. All right? And then you just let go. All right, our house is coming together quite well at this point. All right, next I want to get back to the exact right side of this building. So I'll go to Camera, Standard Views, and I just need to memorize this. It's on a Mac, Command 6. But there it is. Next up, I can use the line tool again, the pencil tool, to maybe click and drag, and click and drag. And notice these tools are amazing. They help you make parallel lines. They help you with all sorts of stuff. Now I'm going to click again and drag. Whoops. I'm going to undo that. But I'll click and drag down here, and then click, and then click. Okay. Now, I may not have done that correctly. This is where I often make a mistake, but it looks like it worked out fine. All right. What this is basically for the shingles of the house, if you want to think of it that way. Okay. And once again, I'm going to use the push-pull tool to click and drag, and I can click and drag and pull down to make it match exactly. Although in this case, to make it look a little more realistic, why not extend it a little bit beyond the house? Okay. And I could also do that on the right side here. And notice that it has to make it work, right? So it altered the direction of that. And I know there's things I could do to make this look better, to make it look more realistic. But again, I'm an amateur. Now coming back around, notice what it did. When I push-pulled, it seems to have moved my face, the surface, and pulled it to the other side of the house. That's not what I was expecting or hoping for. So there's something we can do, luckily, to fix that problem. What we can do is heal the shape. And the way you heal things in Google SketchUp is by using the pencil tool again. And you just click, click, and that's where the flaw was for some reason. So just doing click, click, it restored that surface. What I would have done if that hadn't restored it is I could have just kept clicking at each of these points until it healed the shape. Okay. Next up, a little minor thing. You can see that there's a line right here, and that might be fine with you, but I think I want to delete it. So I'm going to use a new tool. This is the eraser tool, and you can just click on a particular line and it erases it right out. Okay, that looks pretty good to me. I'm happy with that, although I should use the push-pull tool to extend this out away from the house a little bit more. Give me a second to do the same thing with the other side of the roof, and then we'll get started again. Okay, I almost have this done. I just wanted to show you one more example of using the push-pull tool to make things line up perfectly. You can see that this side of the roof doesn't match up perfectly with this side. So all I do is left-click on the surface here, and if I drag down, it'll line up completely with the side of the house, but that's not what I want. I want it to line up with this other side. So I just drag it across to that edge, let go, and now it's a perfect match. Now I could delete some lines that I don't want and continue to touch this up, but I think that's pretty good. I'm pretty happy with this right now. Now it's time to design maybe the front of the house. And so I'm going to go again to my camera, standard views, and this time I'll choose front. And I'll zoom out a little bit. Now because of my toolbars and the way things are, I feel a little bit crowded here. I don't have the space I really need. So I'm going to use a new tool called the pan tool, and it looks like a hand. I'll just click on the pan tool, click on the background, and look at that. I can straighten this out a little bit so that I'm not so crowded over here at the left side of my screen. And I'm going to zoom in again a little more using the scroll wheel on my mouse. You can also use this magnifying glass tool to do the same kind of thing. I'm going to go back now to my selection tool. All right, it's time now for me to create some stairs, a porch for this home. And I'm just going to create a simple porch. To do that, I'll use the pencil tool, and I'm just going to go down here. Let's say I want the porch to be right here. I'll click, move my mouse up, click again, move my mouse again, click, and click. Now this is going to form my first step. Now notice that's about 1.5 feet tall, that step. And so I know I should probably be keeping a closer eye on this indicator down here. This is a home for people with very long legs. Okay, so next I'm going to create another step. And maybe that's enough. Next, I'm going to orbit around to just get a better view of what I've just done. And then, you guessed it, it's time to use the push-pull tool again. I just love this tool, and I can just click and drag to pull out these steps. Now, as I'm doing this, notice that again, there's a helper tool. When I get close to the midpoint of this step, I got a little bubble that popped up, a little circle, and it said midpoint. So that's the midpoint. I may or may not want the step to just go to that point. Maybe I want to pull it out a little bit more. But the idea there is that it will help you to find the exact middle if you would like to do that. Okay, so I'm pretty happy with how that looks. There's my porch. Now I need a door. For the door, I could use that same pencil tool, but this time I want to teach you a new tool, the rectangle tool. And so for this, I'm just going to go ahead and maybe move up a little bit from the base of the top step. I'll click and drag, but I am not pushing the button anymore, right? And I'll just drag this up. That's a 10-foot tall door, okay? And I'll click, and there's my door, all right? And I'm going to also put in a circle using the circle tool. This is going to be the door handle, of course, and it's going to be an awesome looking door handle. Very realistic. And then I sometimes like to add yet another rectangle inside the first rectangle. So inside the door, sometimes I'll make another rectangle. Now I probably should have put the door and the frame around the door a little closer to the stairs, but that's okay. And it's time now, again, you guessed it, for the push-pull tool. I'm going to use this to kind of pull the door frame out just a little. And I could also push the door in a little if I want to. It's up to you. And then I'll pull the door handle out a little bit. Now I could get a little more realistic with this and a little more ornate with the door, but I'm just going to leave it as is for now. I'll orbit back to the front of the house, or I could just go to Camera, Standard Views, Front, and it's time now to put in a window. And I'll just put one pretty large window. Okay, just right there. Now, as you're creating shapes, one of the things you can watch for is this. You see that? There's a diagonal line going through my rectangle. That shows the golden section. If you're not aware of this, there are such things as golden triangle, golden section. And what these are shapes that are pleasing to the eye. Okay? This is the right shape, basically, for a window if you want it to look really nice. Okay. Now, a lot of people just ignore that and make windows of different dimensions, different shapes that just appeal to them. So it's okay to ignore that, but that is a little helper that you can choose the golden section for your shape. I'll just let go and stick with that, and then I'll click and drag to make, again, another rectangle, just like I did with the door. And then I could orbit around a little bit and use the push-pull tool to kind of push that window in just a little bit. All right, my house is looking awesome. It's looking pretty good so far. Next up, I want to show you how to use materials. Basically, this is a window. It's a different kind of material than the rest of the house. It's special in a way. And I can indicate that by using materials. So I'm going to need some more tools. I'll go up here to Window, choose Materials, and click. On a Windows computer, this would look different, and it may be hidden in a different option or a different menu. So if you can't find materials easily, you could just go to Help and do a search for materials, and it should guide you to where to find that. Okay, so now that I've got materials, look, I've got paint that I can use, all these different colors to paint my house. There's also these color sliders that I can use to select the perfect color. I can use an image, I can use pencils, but there's also texture palettes, and this is really what I want to show in this case. When you go to texture palettes, there's all of these options, and one of them is glass and mirrors. So I'll select it, and I can basically turn this window into glass. And I'll do that by selecting one of these textures, and then a paint bucket tool appears, and I click, and now that is glass. Now it's kind of hard to see through that glass. It's tinted or something, I don't know. But if I select a different one of these options, look, now I can see through into the house. I can even see our character in there standing still. And there's different kinds of glass that you can use that are also transparent. It's up to you to pick the material that you want to use. While I'm at it, I could add some other materials to my house. For example, there is an option for brick, siding, cladding, things like that. So maybe I'll make this a brick house just by selecting brick and clicking. Maybe I make it a little bit bigger of brick. Okay, so you can see there's lots of different options I have here. Now for siding, maybe I put siding right here. Okay, if you look carefully, here's some siding options. So I'll just make that siding. Over here, siding. And then I'll put brick on all of these other walls. I'm going to go back to the camera standard view and I'll click back. I need to zoom out a little bit, so I'm going to zoom out and finish putting in those materials. Okay, flash forward a little bit. I've finished putting materials on the different surfaces and items in the house. So now what I'd like to do is kind of furnish this house a little bit. If I zoom in a little bit by using the scroll wheel, look, I can actually go inside the house and I can orbit around a little bit and just get a feel for what the inside of this house looks like. Now, as I'm doing this, I could be thinking about what to put inside the house because that is an option. You can actually furnish the house with things like tables and chairs and beds and walls and things like that. So let's take a look at how you could do that. What you would want to do is go up here to Window and choose Components. Now on a Windows computer, I think it's slightly different, but I don't recall exactly what the differences are. But here, what you can do is do a search in the 3D warehouse to see what's available. So I'm going to type in table. It does a quick search, and these are all online assets, online items that I can bring in and use in my project if I would like to. Okay, so I can just look through those, and I could be more specific if I need to. I could put in something like kitchen table and get a little bit different table. I'm going to go with this particular one here. So I just click on it, and look, it tries to add it to my project, and it succeeded. There's a nice looking table in 3D, and I can just place it where I want it to be by just pressing the mouse button. Okay, great. Now, of course, I could do a search for a chair. I could do a search for a sofa or a couch or whatever it is that I want to include in my SketchUp project. So it's kind of fun to do this, and you can just bring in the elements that you want to include in your house or whatever the project is that you're working on. I'll just click to set that there. Okay, so have fun looking through those components and seeing what you can add to your projects. I'm going to zoom back out because I do want to add one more element to the exterior of this house, and that is I'd like to put in a lawn. And how would I do that? Well, first off, I need to get a better camera view. I'm just going to go up to Camera, Standard Views, Top, and then I'm going to zoom out a bit so I can see from a bird's eye straight down view what the house is going to look like. Okay, I'm pretty happy with that. Now, to put in a lawn, it's as simple as creating a rectangle, and I could do that using the pencil tool or the line tool, or I could use this rectangle tool. In this case, I'm just going to use the rectangle tool. So I'll just click, and then I released the mouse button, and now I'm just moving the mouse, and then I'll click again, and there is the lawn for my house. You can see it put it right underneath the house, just like I had expected. But it is a good idea to orbit around like I'm doing here to just make sure that it put it in the right place that you expected to be putting it. All right, so now at this point, I can go in and I can go back into the window menu, choose materials, and I could apply some vegetation materials to that grass or lawn. You can see one of the options is landscaping, fencing, and vegetation. And so I can just go down and pick a particular kind of lawn, click, and it becomes that kind of vegetation. So it's really kind of fun to do this, to design something and have the feeling that you have kind of designed it from scratch. It's pretty cool. Now, of course, there's lots of other landscaping techniques I could choose, xeriscaping or whatever it might be, but it's kind of a fun thing to be able to do. I'm going to leave it at grass. I could put in fencing around it as well. And if I jump back into the components search, I could do a search for things like trees. And there's a tree that looks pretty good. I just click on it, and it should try to add it to my project. It often slows down a little bit when you do this, so just be aware of that. And that looks more like a shrub or a very small tree, but you can do a search in there for bigger trees, and you can also click on an object and try to make it bigger. And one way to make it bigger is using this scale tool. And you'll notice, like I said at the beginning, some of these same tools are across the top of the screen. I could just click here for the scale tool. But anyway, just grab one point, preferably the corner of that tree or of that box around the tree. And now I've got a nice, much more full-grown sized tree. All right, so there's a lot to explore in Google SketchUp, and notice here at the top you can do searches for all sorts of objects that you could add to the landscaping or to the structure of your house or the interior of the house. There's even things that you could put up in the sky. You can type in airplane and you can put an airplane up there. You can put clouds in the sky and apply texture to the sky if you'd like to. There's even some science fiction elements in the components menu. For example, if you do a search for Enterprise, you'll get the Trekkies out there will get a nice surprise or two. So check that out. And there's a lot of really fun stuff that you can quickly add to your project. When you're done creating your Google SketchUp project, you can go up to File, and there's different ways that you can save this. First of all, if you want, you can share what you've created to the 3D warehouse so that other people can find it. You could also save this as a template so that you could go back easily and kind of take it from here, but take it in a different direction. You can share templates as well. But more often than not, I choose Save As or Export. Those are the two options that I most often choose. So I'm going to Save As first, just to show you what that's like. And you can save this as a SketchUp model so that it can be opened by anyone that has SketchUp. You can see it's a .skp file. You can also change it and go back to a previous version of SketchUp. Okay, so those are the options there if you just need to save the model as a SketchUp file. But if you would like to save it in another way, you can go to File, Export. You can export it as a 2D graphic, basically an image of what you have created. Or you can export it as a 3D model. And this gives you several different options. You can save it as a colada file, 3ds, KMZ for usage in Google Earth. There's AutoCAD, some really good options here for saving 3D files, especially if you're a graphic artist or graphic designer and have access to some of these programs, or if you're a drafter. So, like I said at the beginning, I am by no means an expert in Google SketchUp. I'm sure the dimensions of my house here are ridiculous, and I'm sure that there's better ways to do what I've done. But I hope that by watching this tutorial, you've been able to get a sense of what is possible in Google SketchUp and a way for you to get started using and trying out this great product that really does have a lot of potential. Thanks for watching, and please consider subscribing to my YouTube channel for more videos about technology for teachers and students, and look for new uploads to the channel at least every Monday, but there will also be other uploads during the week as well from time to time. Thanks for watching.